TranceKropotkin. The works of Peter Kropotkin exemplify Schiller's statement in Letter VI of Letters upon the aesthetical education of man that a healthy and harmonious state of humanity cannot be achieved by the coercive means of the state. Can this effect of harmony be attained by the state? That is not possible, for the state, as at present constituted, has given occasion to evil, and the state, as conceived in the idea, instead of being able to establish this more perfect humanity, ought to be based upon it. The primary difference between Schiller and Kropotkin is that the latter, rather than seeking a state that truly embodies the will of a fully developed humanity, insists that the very existence of the state is, by its very nature, incompatible with the natural social instincts of human beings, and that society, in order for humanity to achieve its potential, must be organized by means of voluntary cooperative organizations, which both ensure the liberty of the individual and provide for the common needs of the group, without which the development of the individual is impossible. Whereas the bourgeois conception of the individual, one characterized by pure selfishness and the pursuit of profit, junk food and pornography, reduces the subject to a slovenly, isolated bundle of desires. The corresponding Marxian abstraction reduces the individual to an epiphenomenon of history, praxis, infrastructure, the state, or any number of other abstractions. These dichotomous forms of organization and ideology perfectly embody Schiller's concepts of savagery and barbarism, and both are intrinsically hostile both to the living human beings and to the needs of the communities which they comprise. Kropotkin presents a picture of human nature which is, contrary to both the tabula rasa model, still popular in the social sciences, and to the essentially negative and destructive concept of the will which has been dispersed throughout Western culture by the descendants of Schopenhauer, positive, and which is characterized by a natural tendency towards social existence and cooperation. If the empirical philosophers have hitherto failed to prove the progress of moral conceptions, which may be the leading principle of evolution, the fault lies to a great extent with the speculative, that is, the non-scientific philosophers. They have so strongly denied the empirical origin of man's moral feelings, they have gone to such subtle reasoning in order to assign a supernatural origin to the moral sense, and they have spoken so much about the destination of man, the way of his existence, and the aim of nature, that a reaction against the mythological and metaphysical conceptions which had risen round this question was unavoidable. Moreover, the modern evolutionists, having established the presence in the animal world of a keen struggle for life among different species, could not accept such a brutal process, which entails so much suffering upon sentient beings, as the expression of a supreme being, and they consequently denied that any ethical principle could be discovered in it. Only now that the evolution of species, races of men, human institutions, and of ethical ideas themselves, has been proved to be the result of natural forces, has it become possible to study all the factors of this evolution, including the ethical factor of mutual support and growing sympathy, without the risk of falling back into a supernatural philosophy. But, this being so, we reach a point of considerable philosophical importance. We are enabled to conclude that the lesson which man derives from the study of nature and his own history is the permanent presence of a double tendency towards a greater development, on the one side of sociality, and, on the other side, of a consequent increase of the intensity of life, which results in an increase of happiness for the individuals, and in progress, physical, intellectual, and moral. This double tendency is a distinctive characteristic of life in general. It is always present, and belongs to life, as one of its attributes, whatever aspects life may take on our planet or elsewhere. And this is not a metaphysical assertion of the universality of the moral law, or a mere supposition. Without the continual growth of sociality, and consequently of the intensity and variety of sensations, life is impossible. Therein lies its essence. If that element is lacking, life tends to ebb, to disintegrate, to cease. This may be recognized as an empirically discovered law of nature. While developing this positive and humanistic concept of the social instinct throughout his career as a biologist, Kropotkin in no sense denies the existence of impulses which can be turned towards violence and coercion. Indeed, the very worst possibilities of human behavior are observable on a daily basis, serving the ends of selfish acquisition and social privilege. But he insists that all of the natural instincts which directed to such ends can be turned to positive, socially constructive ends, and have simply been misdirected toward oppressive ends. We have hitherto been speaking of the conscious, deliberate actions of man, those performed intentionally. But side by side with our conscious life we have an unconscious life which is very much wider. Yet we have only to notice how we dress in the morning, trying to fasten a button that we know we lost last night, or stretching out our hands to take something that we ourselves have moved away, to obtain an idea of this unconscious life and realize the enormous part it plays in our existence. It makes up 3/4 of our relations with others, our ways of speaking, smiling, frowning, getting heated or keeping cool in a discussion, or unintentional, the result of habits inherited from our human or pre-human ancestors. Only notice the likeness in expression between an angry man and an angry beast, or else consciously or unconsciously acquired. Our manner of acting towards others thus tends to become habitual. To treat others as he would wish to be treated himself becomes with man and all sociable animals simply a habit, so much so that a person does not generally even ask himself how he must act under such and such circumstances. It is only when the circumstances are exceptional, in some complex case or under the impulse of strong passion that he hesitates, and a struggle takes place between the various portions of his brain, for the brain is a very complex organ, the various portions of which act to a certain degree independently. When this happens, the man substitutes himself in imagination for the person opposed to him. He asks himself if he would like to be treated in such a way, and the better he has identified himself with the person whose dignity or interest he has been on the point of injuring, the more moral will his decision be. Or maybe a friend steps in and says to him, "Fancy yourself in his place. Should you have suffered from being treated by him as he has been treated by you?" And this is enough. Thus we only appeal to the principle of equality in moments of hesitation, and in 99 cases out of 100 act morally from habit. It must have been obvious that in all we have hitherto said, we have not attempted to enjoin anything, we have only set forth the manner in which things happen in the animal world and amongst mankind. Formerly the Church threatened men with hell to moralize them, and she succeeded in demoralizing them instead. The judge threatens with imprisonment, flogging, the gallows, in the name of those social principles he has filched from society, and he demoralizes them. And yet the very idea that the judge may disappear from the earth at the same time as the priest causes authoritarians of every shade to cry out about peril to society. But we are not afraid to forego judges and their sentences. We forego sanctions of all kinds, even obligations to morality. We are not afraid to say, "Do what you will, act as you will," because we are persuaded that the great majority of mankind, in proportion to their degree of enlightenment and the completeness with which they free themselves from existing fetters, will behave and act always in a direction useful to society, just as we are persuaded beforehand that a child will one day walk on its 2 feet and not on all fours simply because it is born of parents belonging to the genus Homo. All we can do is to give advice, and again while giving it we add, this advice will be valueless if your own experience and observation do not lead you to recognize that it is worth following. When we see a youth stooping and so contracting his chest and lungs, we advise him to straighten himself, hold up his head and open his chest. We advise him to fill his lungs and take long breaths, because this will be his best safeguard against consumption. But at the same time we teach him physiology that he may understand the functions of his lungs, and himself choose the posture he knows to be the best. And this is all we can do in the case of morals. We have only
are right to give advice, to which we add, follow it if it seems good to you, but while leaving to each the right to act as he thinks best, while utterly denying the right of society to punish one in any way for any anti-social act he may have committed. We do not forego our own capacity to love what seems to us good and to hate what seems to us bad. Love and hate, for only those who know how to hate know how to love. We keep this capacity, and as this alone serves to maintain and develop the moral sentiments in every animate society, so much the more will it be enough for the human race. We only ask one thing, to eliminate all that impedes the free development of these two feelings in the present society, all that perverts our judgment, the state, the church, exploitation, judges, priests, governments, exploiters. Today when we see a Jack the Ripper murder one after another some of the poorest and most miserable of women, our first feeling is one of hatred. If we had met him the day when he murdered that woman who asked him to pay her for her slum lodging, we should have put a bullet through his head, without reflecting that the bullet might have been better bestowed in the brain of the owner of that wretched den. But when we recall to mind all the infamies which have brought him to this, when we think of the darkness in which he prowls haunted by images drawn from indecent books or thoughts suggested by stupid books, our feeling is divided. And if someday we hear that Jack is in the hands of some judge who has slain in cold blood a far greater number of men, women and children than all the Jacks together, if we see him in the hands of one of those deliberate maniacs, then all our hatred of Jack the Ripper will vanish. It will be transformed into hatred of a cowardly and hypocritical society and its recognized representatives. All the infamies of a Ripper disappear before that long series of infamies committed in the name of law. It is these we hate. For Kropotkin, much like Schiller, the development of this positive and constructive human nature finds its fullest state in the pursuit of creative play. In Kropotkin's philosophy of revolution, the expropriation of the basic, physical means of life is only a minor precursor to the true goal of creating an environment in which individuals can flourish as fully creative human beings. He sees this, not as a distant goal, to be achieved at the end of history, after a long process of social engineering, but as an immediate, primary human need, as important as food, clean water, shelter and medicine. Man is not a being whose exclusive purpose in life is eating, drinking, and providing a shelter for himself. As soon as his material wants are satisfied, other needs, which, generally speaking, may be described as of an artistic character, will thrust themselves forward. These needs are of the greatest variety, they vary with each and every individual, and the more society is civilized, the more will individuality be developed, and the more will desires be varied. Even today we see men and women denying themselves necessaries to acquire mere trifles, to obtain some particular gratification, or some intellectual or material enjoyment. A Christian or an ascetic may disapprove of these desires for luxury, but it is precisely these trifles that break the monotony of existence and make it agreeable. Would life, with all its inevitable drudge and sorrows, be worth living, if, besides daily work, man could never obtain a single pleasure according to his individual tastes? If we wish for a social revolution, it is no doubt, first of all, to give bread to everyone, to transform this execrable society, in which we can every day see capable workmen dangling their arms for want of an employer who will exploit them, women and children wandering shelterless at night, whole families reduced to dry bread, men, women, and children dying for want of care and even for want of food. It is to put an end to these iniquities that we rebel, but we expect more from the revolution. We see that the worker, compelled to struggle painfully for bare existence, is reduced to ignore the higher delights, the highest within man's reach, of science, and especially of scientific discovery, of art, and especially of artistic creation. It is in order to obtain for all of us joys that are now reserved to a few, in order to give leisure and the possibility of developing everyone's intellectual capacities, that the social revolution must guarantee daily bread to all. After bread has been secured, leisure is the supreme aim. No doubt, nowadays, when hundreds and thousands of human beings are in need of bread, coal, clothing, and shelter, luxury is a crime. To satisfy it, the worker's child must go without bread. But in a society in which all have the necessary food and shelter, the needs which we consider luxuries today will be the more keenly felt. And as all men do not and cannot resemble one another, the variety of tastes and needs is the chief guarantee of human progress. There will always be, and it is desirable that there should always be, men and women whose desire will go beyond those of ordinary individuals in some particular direction. Everybody does not need a telescope, because, even if learning were general, there are people who prefer to examine things through a microscope to studying the starry heavens. Some like statues, some like pictures. A particular individual has no other ambition than to possess a good piano, while another is pleased with an accordion. The tastes vary, but the artistic needs exist in all. In our present, poor capitalistic society, the man who has artistic needs cannot satisfy them unless he is heir to a large fortune, or by dint of hard work appropriates to himself an intellectual capital which will enable him to take up a liberal profession. Still he cherishes the hope of someday satisfying his tastes more or less, and for this reason he reproaches the idealist communist societies with having the material life of each individual as their sole aim. In your communal stores you may perhaps have bread for all, he says to us, but you will not have beautiful pictures, optical instruments, luxurious furniture, artistic jewelry, in short, the many things that minister to the infinite. PG 97. Variety of human tastes. And you suppress the possibility of obtaining anything beside the bread and meat which the commune can offer to all, and the drab linen in which all your later citizens will be dressed. These are the objections which all communist systems have to consider, and which the founders of new societies, established in American deserts, never understood. They believed that if the community could procure sufficient cloth to dress all its members, a music room in which the brothers could strum a piece of music, or rack to play from time to time, it was enough. They forgot that the feeling for art existed in the agriculturist as well as in the burgher. And, notwithstanding that the expression of artistic feeling varies according to the difference in culture, in the main it remains the same. In vain did the community guarantee the common necessaries of life. In vain did it suppress all education that would tend to develop individuality. In vain did it eliminate all reading save the Bible. Individual tastes broke forth, and caused general discontent. Quarrels arose when somebody proposed to buy a piano or scientific instruments, and the elements of progress flagged. The society could only exist on condition that it crushed all individual feeling, all artistic tendency, and all development. Will the anarchist commune be impelled by the same direction? Evidently not, if it understands that while it produces all that is necessary to material life, it must also strive to satisfy all manifestations of the human mind. In Kropotkin's philosophy, we see a far more nuanced understanding of the nature of the individual and the group, of both human nature and human culture, than one can find in all of the bankrupt, sophistic jargon which conceals the simplistic, anti-humanistic truisms of the current approaches to the humanities, in which liberation is whimpered from every seminar table by either fork-tongued, or maybe just ingenuous, Frodo. Marxian devotees who reduce the very human beings they wish to liberate either to empty vessels full of the current ideological order, whose liberation can only consist in wiping their blank slate clean, filling it up with vacuous jargon that signifies nothing, or on the other hand to hostile, contemptible creatures utterly bent on power, conquest, and domination. These should be swept away and replaced with Kropotkin's vision, which includes every aspect of human life and potential, never forgetting the good, always turning the bad toward the good, always remembering that any act we perform in the world is not an epiphenomenon of academic abstractions, but something which affects real, living human beings. This is a vision through which we, both as artists and critics, might drag our creaky old bodies back out of these musty old classrooms, and brandishing proudly our handfuls of flowers and Molotov cocktails, learn once again how to love and to hate in all of the right ways. To love, to hate, 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 to love, to hate.